What's up guys, Houndish here, and today we're jumping in with some Destiny 2 stuff regarding Season 6, Joker's Wild. We've got a bunch of news and updates to round up, so we've got words about Season 6 Pinnacle weapons, a bunch of new updates and changes to the game, we'll talk about power level for Joker's Wild, looks like there may be a way to catch up with power level right there, we'll speak about the new Gambit mode, and it appears that this mode is codenamed Mamba, we'll talk about that in a moment. I also wanted to give some thoughts on rewards for that, and we'll talk about when Bungie are most likely to actually reveal Joker's Wild. There's a lot of anticipation for that reveal right now, but we'll also round up other quality of life changes, clarification about certain Sandbox updates, we'll talk about community concerns regarding content, and we've got some other new stuff to round up in this video, so let's get straight into it. There's been a lot of speculation about Joker's Wild, when we can actually anticipate more information about it, and of course Bungie have started talking just a little bit about Season of the Drifter itself. A question that I've seen quite a lot in the community would be, are there going to be new Pinnacle weapons inside of Season 6? And Cosmo said Season of the Drifter info coming next week, including info on new Pinnacle weapons. So of course going back to Warmind, Bungie started rolling out Pinnacle weapons. We had Redrix's Claymore for PvP, with Forsaken of course we got Luna's Howl, Not Forgotten, and then last season we finally got equivalents for Gambit as well as the Vanguard. So it does seem pretty likely that we'll get a PvP, Vanguard, and Gambit Pinnacle weapon for the next season. I've seen a lot of PvP players request to see a Pinnacle sniper rifle, but I've seen fewer suggestions for Gambit and Vanguard, so let us know your thoughts below, what you think those weapons could be, or any that you'd love to see in Season 6. Now regarding power level for Season 6 and Joker's Wild specifically, you'll remember back in Season of the Forge, when they launched the Forges in Black Armory, of course there was a bit of a lockout for any players who hadn't hit what was the current max level before Black Armory, and on that subject, Cosmo said, we'll have some info next week on how you can power up quickly to jump right into the new annual pass content. Of course, that's referencing Joker's Wild content specifically, so it sounds like there could potentially be some kind of catch-up mechanic that Bungie employ for this season. Either that, or they're going to speak about ways that you can power level very quickly. So that certainly sounds interesting, and I'll keep you guys posted. Could be very good news for any of you guys who are still leveling up at the moment. And of course, there will be a new maximum power level of 700 for Joker's Wild. Now we are apparently getting a new Gambit mode in Joker's Wild, I'll talk about that in a moment, but of course Bungie did break down Gambit changes for the current Gambit mode that's available in the game, and these include a Primeval Rush that happens on round 3, so if you make it to round 3 of the game, instead of having a typical round, the Primeval Rush will essentially give both teams a boss. First team to kill the boss will win the round. And of course this is going to speed up how fast Gambit games are, and Robbie Stevens from Bungie gave some clarification. Power ammo is removed at the beginning of every Gambit round, and this has been true since Forsaken's launch. Sudden death will put both teams at an equal playing field, and there will be more details about this in the patch notes for Season of the Drifter. On top of this, Bungie also announced that they're changing the blockers in Gambit, and a small blocker will now be a Taken Goblin with less health than the previous Phalanx. A medium blocker will spawn a Taken Captain. This guy's going to be quite a bit stronger than the medium blocker Knight that we have right now. And finally, a large blocker will be a Taken Knight, and according to Bungie, this guy's going to have quite a bit more health than the large blocker previously. I saw a little bit of concern about Taken Goblins actually shielding each other, and DMG confirmed this is a thing. In playtests it's happened, but not as frequently as in D2's launch due to a change in an earlier hotfix. So in the updated Gambit, he says they haven't encountered any instances of infinite shielding, because of course two goblins shielding each other can become completely immune. However, for now, Bungie are saying infinite shielding isn't something that they've seen in playtests for Gambit. But of course, one of the things that folks really want to know about would be the new Gambit experience. Now Bungie have pretty much confirmed that this will be a new Gambit game mode, and interestingly, on the Destiny app, there does appear to be a mode listed as TBD, but it actually has the Gambit icon next to it. Interestingly, when you look closer at this activity, the description actually reads, I'll tell you when you're older, but in the data there's a category for this called Friendly Name, and it's listed as PvE Comp Mamba. Now interestingly enough, I believe it was a leak a few months back, and a mode codenamed Mamba was referred to back then. So this does indeed look like the new Gambit mode. It doesn't mean that the mode we'll actually get to play will be called Mamba, that could just be the working name, although Mamba, interestingly, is a highly venomous snake, and of course we've seen that snake icon for Gambit since it launched with Forsaken. Now some folks may have noticed this is listed as PvE Comp. That doesn't necessarily speak to how the mode will play out, or released any differently to Gambit, because the normal Gambit mode is also listed under PvE Comp. Although Bungie do describe this as Pinnacle Gambit, and Mamba will potentially be the name of this mode when we actually get it in the game, interestingly, so I suppose we know just a tiny bit more about this new Gambit mode. But of course there's lots of feedback about Gambit itself and whether this could be an exciting mode in terms of new content right now, and one of the big things here is absolutely going to be the loot table for this new content. Now we don't know what this stuff is going to be just yet, but this new mode does have the capacity to be somewhat exciting, assuming that there's cool stuff you can actually collect, you know, new armor, weapons, and I would imagine as well that Bungie will work on putting some exotics and some quest stuff in here as well. But otherwise, this is what Bungie have had to say about Joker's Wild and the annual pass releases so far.
So with Joker's Wild, there's this really interesting character named the Drifter, and there's all of this backstory. But you'll begin to get a glimpse of that in Forsaken, and Joker's Wild is our chance to go deeper. And what is his greater purpose, and what is inside that crazy rock he's got attached to his ship?
In Joker's Wild, Season of the Drifter, that's going to be new Pinnacle Gambit activities that you can play with your friends.
So other than that, Bungie haven't said an awful lot about Joker's Wild specifically, and some folks are wondering, why hasn't there been a reveal for this just yet? The easiest way to answer this question is to look back at Black Armory. So Black Armory's reveal was actually November 27th, but that was also the release date of Season 5. So outside of a few teasers, they did keep pretty quiet about Black Armory until literally the week before it dropped into the game, and so it's entirely possible that they could do that again, and if we are going to see a repeat of that, then we could probably anticipate major reveals for Black Armory actually being on the 5th of March. But of course, it's also possible this week. There is a live stream from Bungie on Tuesday, which is a raid-along, so in terms of possible reveals in the coming week, it would either probably be the 25th, which is the Monday, or the 28th before Bungie posts their weekly blog. Otherwise, I think we are going to have to wait until March 5th, but based on what we've seen before, I just thought that would be cool to set some expectations. Now a quick shout before we talk about more updates and changes to the game. Of course, we are going to be getting Triple Infamy this week's reset, so that'll be 26th of February starting at 9 AM PST. Of course, it'll be a fantastic opportunity to level up if you are still working on Gambit stuff. Quick shout though, considering we don't have Triple Infamy very often, when this is active, it actually affects the XP that you get from Gambit bounties as well. So essentially, if you complete a bunch of bounties and then turn them in when Triple Infamy is active, you'll get a ton of points. Of course, when you're in the Legend rank for Gambit though, losses don't actually give you Infamy points. So one of the shouts might be to complete a bunch of bounties, level up using Triple Infamy, but then turn the bounties in for the final Gambit rank, essentially to avoid getting caught up and not making progress when you lose games. Just a quick shout for next week. On top of this, Bungie have also confirmed that Supremacy will be active inside of the Crucible next week as well. But now let's get back to some season changes. DMG said Update 2.2.0 will have some nice quality of life fixes. One of them includes fixed an issue where transferring items using the Destiny app would consistently re-trigger Triumph notifications. So whenever you drag something over in one of the apps, of course you'll have noticed, or may have actually stopped noticing, that you get all of these Triumph notifications again every time that you do that. That's something that's finally going to go away after the update on the 5th of March. It's also worth highlighting the Petra's run change again, or the change to guitar errors in the Last Wish raid specifically. Of course, it's something that's held a lot of folks up in doing Petra's runs, or simply has turned folks away, because it is possible to get to the end of the raid and then actually get error coded out, which means that you lose that flawless run. Another thing that's going to be fixed in 2.2.0. Some folks in the community pointed out that with the Gambit changes they're bringing in March, it will make a bunch of Gambit changes either impossible to achieve or very difficult to achieve, and Cosmo said the team is aware that this will affect some triumphs and are working for some changes for later in the season. DMG once again clarified though, next week we'll have more to show for Season of the Drifter. We'll have a few more patch note previews as well, but RNG Triumph seals will not be addressed in Update 2.2.0, however the team is currently looking at them. So if you're curious about title RNG, of course there's lots of conversation about Cursebreaker, even Riven'sbane, and then of course some of the even heavier RNG titles. Unfortunately, it doesn't look like there'll be changes in the March update, but hopefully these kind of community requests will be reflected even more so in any new titles that we get for Season of the Drifter. So there we go, a bit more news about Season of the Drifter. Of course, for Joker's World specifically, it looks like we're going to have to wait a little while. We could get that reveal next week, but I think some of the community frustration right now can definitely be attributed to the fact that the upcoming content we're getting hasn't been spoken about all that much by Bungie yet. Of course, there have been other things that have happened in the community. Bungie confirmed that Trials is not going to be coming back for a good while, and there are other gripes that the community has that are taking quite a while for Bungie to address, so I can completely understand the frustration in the community, especially when it comes to Joker's Wild and the content reveals there. Folks who are pretty relaxed might say, just wait until they talk about it, man. You know, we're going to get the content regardless. And that's also something that I can relate to. But I guess the thing to put into perspective is that over the last year, especially last year, there was a lot of feedback and conversation from Bungie that was very, very continuous. And while communication on the whole is still pretty good versus other expansions that we've got where things have been super, super hyped up, we haven't really seen that for the annual pass content. So there is a definite shift in how Bungie handle this stuff. It's also possible that right now they're kind of stepping around new releases and things that are coming out. Of course, Anthem and The Division, and perhaps don't want to drop reveals while there are other big things going on for those games. But guys, I'm totally with you. Very much waiting for Bungie to talk about Joker's Wild. But as always, I will be keeping you posted here on the channel, so be sure to hit that subscribe button, turn on notifications, if you want to keep up to date with everything related to Destiny 2, pretty much as soon as it happens. Otherwise, for now, I appreciate you guys tuning in as always. I know this is unrelated to Destiny, but a lot of you guys are very curious about the Division 2. They did actually post a new endgame trailer for that just yesterday, and the open beta for Division 2 will be March 1st to March 4th. So just a little bit of potentially related news if any of you guys are interested. But otherwise, thank you for tuning in, guys. If you've enjoyed the video, a rating below and a comment, all that good stuff is super appreciated. But otherwise, whatever you get up to, thanks for tuning in, and I'll catch you very soon.